This is
Make It Plain.
Make it plain.
MIP
With Masamela Matfumo.
Mark Thompson.
Make it plain.
Get woke.
Ladies and gentlemen, always a pleasure to have as a guest with us someone representing a union that does a lot of great work in our country, and a union in which I have a lot of good friends around the country. My guest is president of the Service Employees International Union, Local 2015, California's largest union and the nation's largest long-term care union, representing over 400,000 home care and nursing home workers. And we should keep in mind that African-American women make up nearly a third of the home care workforce. So we welcome, to make it plain, April Verrett. April, how are you this morning?
I'm doing well this morning. Thanks so much for having me.
It is a pleasure to have you. So I've been, looking at the numbers in terms of COVID. Those who have been most affected during the pandemic in terms of job losses have been Black women. So I'm curious, is that applicable to the home care industry as well?
I would say that has affected our members to a lesser extent.
Okay.
Because during the pandemic, our members had to work, right? They are essential workers, always have been, always will be. And of course, nursing home workers, played a really critical role during the pandemic. And the overwhelming number of home care workers were put into action, making sure that the vulnerable people they care for, our seniors, people who live with disabilities, those who were at the highest risk of, the worst effects of COVID, we were able to make sure home care workers could do their jobs. And that kept people as safe as they could, right, in their homes.
Good.
While without them, I think, would have seen even worse pandemic.
Yeah. Well, we're grateful for that. However, as essential as your workers are, you all aren't treated as essentially as you should be treated, are you?
No. Most essential workers never felt very essential, right? They never felt valued. And home care workers, I would say, have been devalued, demeaned, disrespected for centuries. The fact that they had to continue to work without PPE, they did not, for the most part, have access to paid time off. Health insurance is not something all home care workers can count on. And they were isolated, right? They work by themselves. They work with vulnerable populations, and they are often the last ones thought about when we think about the workers that we need to protect. But home care workers have been standing up for the last couple of decades, organizing, building their power, demanding more. And we find ourselves on the cusp of passing a $400 billion plan that centers these workers, that invest in them so that they can continue to invest in our country.
And that would be the infrastructure plan, obviously. So talk to us about that $400 billion investment and what it would actually do, how it would benefit your workers.
Sure. I'm happy to talk about it. So the $400 billion would invest money over a decade to do a number of things. It would increase the number of slots for folks who are eligible to receive home and community-based services. About 800,000 people are on waiting lists across the country. That would mean seniors, people with disabilities who have been waiting to get the care that they need to live in dignity would have access to subsidized services. That's important, right? When we look at what happened in our country's nursing homes last year, it really heightens our awareness that people want to age in place. They want to age in their homes, and this investment would help people be able to do that. The second thing that it does, it creates 1 million new jobs. By 2028, our country will need 4.7 million new people wanting to do the work of a home care worker in order to meet the need of an aging population. 10,000 people in our country turn 65 every single day.
Wow.
So wow, right? Think about that. And so we
Mm.
need nearly 5 million new people wanting to do this work. This plan would invest and create 1 million good jobs that are, as you talked about, overwhelmingly done by women and by women of color. So essentially, this is a jobs plan for Black women. We have never in this
Mm.
country had that type of investment in our communities. And it also
Mm.
gives these workers a pathway to a union, right? We know that that is important to build power, to give people the access to be able to set their own wages, right? To make sure they have training and a safe workplace. So we are thrilled, and we are talking to as many people as we can about it because we want to make sure we get this done this year.
Well, yeah. Well, let's talk about that. Are we good on this? There's this compromise. There's Joe Manchin.
Uh-huh.
There's Kristen Sinema. I mean, are we? This is in there, but are we good? Is it tight, solid in terms of getting through, or what do you think?
Look, power concedes nothing without fight. We are good as long as we continue to do what we know how to do, as long as we organize. We are holding 25 town hall meetings across the country. We are running television ads in West Virginia and Arizona. We are organizing our tails off because we are not resting on our laurels. We have a president and
Right.
a madam vice president that's in the corner and really throwing down for this plan. But we know the politics are hard. But we're not going to stop fighting until the bill is signed.
More MIP after this message. What up, y'all? It's Torre, author of I Would Die For You, Why Prince Became an Icon. Check out Who Was Prince, an epic 8-episode podcast about Prince, where we talk to his girlfriends, his musicians, his engineers, his managers, all sorts of people who were close to him to find out who he really was. Follow Who Was Prince wherever fine podcasts are streamed.
So it's included in the compromise. Is that accurate?
The current state of play is that they're talking about the physical infrastructure compromise, and then we heard the president say and others say there will be a second reconciliation bill. I don't care which bill it's in, right? Just get it done.
Right.
As long as
As
it's
long
done.
as it's done. Yeah. I am very active in the movement to pass HR 40, the reparations bill. And one of the, you mentioned, Black women, the domestic work. So, I mean, the health home care workers. And you mentioned how, this would be unprecedented historically. And that's been one of the things that we've talked about, wealth of the pathway to wealth for the middle class excluded us.
Mm-hmm.
And we were originally excluded when it came to Social Security even.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, and you're right. Something like this would, it wouldn't correct necessarily wrongs from the past, but it would start something off that really has never happened before.
Yeah, it begins to recognize the legacy of systemic and structural racism that these workers have been held back because of. The work that home care workers do is the same work that slave women did, right? I'm just going to say it plain. They take care of people who need to be taken care of, just like slave women took care of the old, right? In the big house, they took care of people's children. We still are taking care of people's children. In the 1940s, when the National Labor Relations Act was passed, these workers, along with agricultural workers, farm workers, were left out, right? It was a compromise with the Southerners that said, we will not give those women, we will not give those men, Black and brown, the same labor rights that they gave others. And so we are still fighting to make sure these workers have those rights today. We got to make it plain, Reverend Mark.
No, and you did. You did, and I appreciate that. That is very important. So what can people listening do to help to be supportive, to help, in this movement, to be sure this money remains in the budget? And again, that's the term he's been using. What can we do, and what can listeners do to get involved in the mobilization?
So there's an active campaign in our union. We call it Care is Essential. We are holding a national day of action on July 13th. We'll be having actions in 40 cities across the country, DC, Chicago, New York, Los Angeles, Oakland, and others among them. Look us up online. Care is Essential, hashtag Care is Essential. Find the day of action. Come out and join us on the 13th. You can also follow us on social media. There's an online petition where we are sending messages to the cinemas, to the mansions, to every single member of Congress and member of the Senate, even the folks that are our champions.
Yeah.
We need to thank them. Last week, a bill dropped and we had 40 senators co-sponsor the legislation around better care, better jobs. So it's important that we applaud our champions and we keep those who are not yet our champions, keep their feet to the fire. And all of us have a role to play to do that. And not just the political piece, we need to be talking about this in our churches. We need to be talking to our neighbors. Not enough of us know that we have a plan that centers us. And we make a lot of hay, right, about not having policies that center Black people. This is an opportunity for all of us, and we all need to get behind it.
Yeah, that's very important. More MIP after this message. And we mentioned Mansion Cinema.
Mm-hmm.
Don't, with West Virginia and Arizona, have aging populations with home care workers with needs?
It is true.
Isn't that true in both those states?
It is true in every state. And let me just say this. It's not a red issue. It's not a blue issue. This is an American issue. We have done poll after poll, and overwhelmingly across party lines, up to 87% of Americans believe that this should be a priority in this country. 67% of which that it should be a high priority. This isn't partisan. We cannot play politics with people's lives. I think we have an opportunity to decide what type of country do we want to be. Are we going to be a country that just says, I don't care what happens to old people, what happens to children? Or are we going to be a country that makes sure we take care of those who have been taking care of us for most of their lives? And so it's time to do that, to center love.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And this is very important. You mentioned it's not a red or blue issue. What is, if any, the Republican House or Senate support like? Is there any, or are they just nullifying everything, including this?
I think we continue to see them, stand against every single issue that makes sense, right? From a commission to investigate what happened on January 6th to upholding our democracy and voting rights, right? I think it's a problem in this country that folks can act, in a way that is very un-American, but that fight will continue.
But isn't it also true, though, when we look at even the constituency within their party and those who watch that 24-hour cable news channel they have, they tend to be an aging population.
That's right.
So this is just another example of their party working against their own constituency's interest.
That's right. And people being convinced to work against their own self-interest. But that's why we're not, giving up. We're talking to everybody, right?
Yeah.
And this is an issue, like I said, 92% of voters across party lines think that this makes sense. When people look at the $400 billion proposal, 87% think that it makes sense.
Yeah. Well, you made a lot of sense.
Well, thank you.
And we invite all of you to get involved in this, to be supportive. Tell everyone again the website, President Verrett, where people can go and get involved.
Sure. Care is Essential. Hashtag Care is Essential on social media, and look us up at SEIU.org.
All right. Wonderful. April Verrett, folks, the Service Employees International Union, Local 2015, out in Cali, the largest union in Cali. And we appreciate all you're doing, and we're here to be as supportive as we can, okay?
All right. Thank you very much. You take good care.
All right. You too.
Thanks for getting woke and listening to Make It Plain. Please remember to listen, like, and wherever you get your podcasts, please give the show a 5-star rating. And please do spread the word. Let's all continue to pray for each other during this pandemic and this police-demic. If all hearts and minds are clear, It has been made plain.